Hello and welcome. This is an overview of a learning media assessment. I am Dr. Alan Chase, a consultant for visual impairment and co-director of the North Carolina Deaf-Blind Project at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. The North Carolina Deaf-Blind Project is a federally funded grant administered by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction in collaboration with partners at the East Carolina University Teacher Support Program for Learners with Deaf Blindness and the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center. A learning media assessment, or LMA, is conducted by a teacher of the visually impaired, or TVI. It determines visual, tactile, and/or auditory learning media that is appropriate for a student with a visual impairment to access both their physical and learning environments. Some students may be dual media users, meaning they access materials using two or more sensory channels. A learning media assessment is objective because it uses multiple sources of data. Observation alone is not sufficient. Ideally, all sources of data will lead to the same outcome. But if it does not, this is an indicator to you that additional evaluations may be necessary. Some common forms of objective data include medical information, previous evaluations, the student's IEP, student work samples, and skill inventories. A learning media assessment is also systematic in that it follows an established protocol. The TVI should assess the student's method of accessing their environment using 4 sensory channels, which includes vision, hearing, tactile means, and kinesthetic movement. It is important to consider both the physical and learning environments when assessing each of these sensory channels. Additionally, the learning media assessment is grounded in the 9 areas of the expanded core curriculum. These 9 areas represent specially designed instruction for students with visual impairments. The learning media assessment should take a comprehensive look at the student's functional vision and methods to access their environment. The first consideration for any student with vision loss should be instruction in Braille. After that, the TVI should assess the student using various sizes and types of fonts under various lighting conditions and changing the contrast of the material. Further, the TVI should assess the student with various forms of low-tech and high-tech forms of assistive technology. Some of these may include various types of paper, types of writing instruments, magnifiers, screen reading programs, video magnifiers, or tablets with built-in accessibility features. On the next 2 slides, you see a sample LMA checklist. It has 4 columns. The first 3 columns indicate which sensory channel the student uses to access a particular task. The 4th column lists specific tasks. The teacher or the visually impaired should mark each area as appropriate. The sample does not represent the entirety of an LMA. Based on the sample LMA checklist on the previous 2 slides, here is a summary of the results of that assessment. The student was found to primarily use tactile means to access information. Auditory was a secondary sensory channel for this student. As stated in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, the IEP team will need to provide instruction in Braille and the use of Braille unless the IEP team determines, after an evaluation, that instruction in Braille or the use of Braille is not appropriate for that student. Once the LMA is complete, the teacher of the visually impaired should compile the results into a report. The typical components of a report include student demographics, a summary of previous evaluations, medical history, educational history, and the procedures followed when conducting the LMA. Next, the TVI should document their observations, any interviews that were conducted with the family, the student, or school staff, a summary of how the student engaged with each of the sensory channels, and how the totality of the report aligns with each of the 9 areas of the expanded core curriculum. Finally, the TVI should conclude the report with a list of recommendations for the school team to consider when developing the student's individualized education plan, or IEP. Thank you for participating in this brief overview of a learning media assessment. If you have any questions, please reach out to Dr. Alan Chase at Alan, ALAN, dot Chase, CHASE, at dpi.nc.gov.